Hello and welcome to ESEA Premier. Now, with ESL Pro League fully underway, all of these teams have their eyes firmly on the prize, Pronogo. Obviously, we've got Hellraisers and Apeks taking center stage in a best of three.
Yeah, that's the case. And remember that Hellraisers being so low in the standings, this game probably not going to be super consequential, but they still have something to prove and they should be still taking it as practice. Whereas Apeks, third in the group, of course, Group A right now, they are showing some form. And realistically speaking, that's what we expect from both of these teams, is to live and die by the form that they're hitting. We've watched Apeks a few times so far this season,
yes.
Squid, and ultimately, pretty consistently, it's been based around not tactics, but whether or not they can hit the shots and whether or not they can capitalize on the mistakes of their opponents. I expect Hellraisers will levy a very similar game plan going into this, and a large portion of that is just because what we have is we have a very contentious matchup, I would say.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what we saw in that first pistol as well, that it doesn't really come down to the individual tactics. It's all about those firefights. Apeks win out 1-0 at the start.
Yeah, blazingly fast beginning here for us, and with Apeks 1-0 up on their, of course, T side. We have to remember that Hellraisers don't have the best of protocols coming into this one on the CT side. That is where they do their best work on Train, probably not going to be likely on Inferno, which is Apex's pick, remember? So as we get into this one, there's plenty of smokes for Hellraisers, but it is just the classic upgraded pistols plus the Scout Scout on Problem. We actually expect that on Gaspadarov because of the fact that he is the latest Opper to grace the server for Hellraisers. They've been certainly doing quite a consistent shuffle there. And with the two SMGs onto Apeks, we expect that this round will be over the commensurate way that it normally is.
Should be. Dennis just waiting outside of this B site with JLM, Deagle, watching above the coffins. He wants to fall back and trade places with Problem inside of construction. That allows Dennis to creep a little bit closer. And just prying for this information with the AK. Gaspadarov's not going to peek this in the meantime, Pronogo. They are actually burrowed outside of this B site as well, so we might see an effective charge sometime soon, led by Dennis, of course, who's got no information yet. This is suspiciously quiet. HR keeping absolutely silent on B. And Dennis is almost certainly on the way. There go the smokes. That might slow him down, but he hits a headshot in the meantime. Problem gone. And with 30 seconds, they're deciding to bail to A instead.
Only two members from Hellraisers here to receive. That's Kalinka and Flarich, and they do only have the upgraded pistols. Obviously, Scout blasted out of the server through the smoke. So this should be over nice and quick, but the smokes will make things a little bit consistently tricky as Apeks march on through brackets.
Send the MAC-10 in first. Kalinka nails him away, and Freddy Frog's just going to pry in the meantime. Despite the low HP, finds both. Bit of help from Relaxer there before the bomb goes down. No real chance for HR, maybe even wanting to save the pistols in this one. I certainly expect that to be the case. You need something carried into the next round, and JLM might just fall foul of this. That is a mistake.
Yeah, Gaspadarov, as the Opper of this CT side, he will be marching off towards B, trying to scarper off and save his armor, his CZ. One of the things that we saw from Apeks in general in some of their games previously is that they would tend towards this slower style where they do, much like Hellraisers on the T side, try to exploit mistakes from their opponents. And in these anti-eco scenarios, you actually expect Hellraisers to maybe go for a risky play, try to march off maybe towards Banana or maybe towards bottom mid, perhaps. However, that doesn't end up happening, and Apeks actually, they certainly run the clock down very narrowly there. They do get the bomb down after the last 10 seconds have already started to expire. We should be able to see them onto a 3-0 lead nonetheless, as Gaspadarov actually invests into a Scout. It looks like Hellraisers will be looking to maybe take him to task here a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was picked up off of the ground, so he can throw away the CZ-75 to Problem, and they can pick up a couple of pistols around it. Time for Apeks to show us what they're made of, though, and just decimate these pistols. I absolutely expect them to drop no more than 1 or 2 players here.
Yeah, that's exactly what the case was before. That was only Gruss going down as he made space with the MAC-10. Looks like a similar strat this time around, pressuring pretty quickly towards Banana. Only one member on B. It's Gaspadarov with the aforementioned Scout, recovered from the battlefield. Interesting strat here to lean so many players towards A. Apeks likely just to walk into this, but they could very easily wrap towards CT. So even though this looks kind of scary to walk into a stack, the weaponry is just not there for Hellraisers whatsoever.
Yeah, you've got to take a risk, and this is exactly what Hellraisers have in mind. 3 players to deal with JLM isolated towards the CT spawn. Gives Freddy Frog a lot of space to try and find this crossfire of Flarich on this A-bomb site. There goes Kalinka. Bomb site's gone, Pronogo. This round firmly over. dealt with easily by the MAC-10s.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kreese will execute the last couple of players here. Gaspadarov trying to get some cheeky tags. Likely not even scoped in with that scout. Now he's on the run, and he won't be... Well, they kind of make a meal out of it in that sense. So many players tagging him down at the end, but it's a very clean 3-0. Very clean third round, I should say specifically. No utility from Hellraisers' eco there to slow them down as the T's try to make their entrance onto the A-bomb site. So certainly something we're going to see a lot of as this series progresses. Hellraisers not so adept at cleaning up those eco wins, which some of the top teams obviously can.
Yeah, they certainly can't. Only posting 1 kill on the board cumulatively in the first 3 rounds. Gross is the only player on this T side to have died. That builds the money up. Apeks have a buffer of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. Freddy Frog even more, almost onto 9. They'll keep the MAC-10s in hand anyway to try and farm some excess cash. Kalinka caught. This A-bomb site should once again fall. And again, it's the SMGs to do everything.
Have to save. Yeah, they absolutely have to save here as well. Those SMGs farming up, and they can upgrade off to M4s. Kalinka and Flarich going down in that scenario is so brutal because obviously Apeks had so many members up, wrapped all the way around towards Library, past Arch. There was no way back in with the utility usage from the T side, so CTs will have to scarper off towards B. Hold on to this AWP and the 2 rifles that they do have. Squid, that is so rough as well. You want to be able to answer back a couple of these CT rounds early on, and this is so critical because Apeks themselves obviously are getting up to a 4th round lead, but that was sort of a bonus for them. And given that it was, and the aforementioned economic buffer that you said that they had, Apeks are not going to be looking at any money problems for the foreseeable future. Hellraisers, on the other hand, they're going to have to head back and figure out what they want to scrounge up here. 2 members can drop, so they should have a proper buy in this one, but if the next round goes the way of Apeks as well, it will be absolute calamity on the side of the CTs.
And only 1 kill tally thus far. That's on Kalinka. They haven't even made a dent in Apeks thus far in the first 4. I expect that to change going further into this half, but upgraded rifles for Grussin, Freddy Frog, they don't even have to invest into them.
Yeah, remember we talked earlier about Apex's form being much higher in general than Hellraisers, and they are showing us why right now, but it's still early days, and this is a best of 3. Stomping ground of Hellraisers will be Train as their second map, remember. So keeping that in mind for the future, right now, this CT side needs to get their heads in the game. They need to get their rifles in the server, and right now they've only had 1 kill, as you mentioned, so very passive setup initially. There's only really 1 player getting aggressive for the CTs. That's Kalinka towards Arch, and that's a more standard setup anyway. So Apeks taking full apps control. They should be on track to finish A, and that will look yet another rough round for the Hellraisers' defense.
The main man to be scared of, Pronogo, is Gaspadarov. Unfortunately, he's a million miles away, tucked inside that B site. Long rotate for him, leaves 3, a crossfire on A. Kalinka just sat up upon those boxes to create that aforementioned crossfire with Problem. As the smokes pile drive through, that'll break off these lines of sight. And Problem once again gets isolated on the balcony. Needs to take the swing. Critters down to 80 doesn't really matter. Very little damage done thus far. And you absolutely have to do it when you've got the rifles in hand.
They heard him drop as well, so Apeks can now decide if they want to even contend with the multiple setup towards Pit. Obviously, Mini Pit and Pit, both staffed right now. Krias can continue to contest these players and hold them there as 3 members from Apeks rushing out towards Library.
Well, Kalinka's sat inside. There goes the incendiary grenade. That breaks forward. Rust needs to take the face. Does. It's consistent frags left, right, and center as Problems efficiently dealt with inside for the Pit. That's beautiful stuff, I've got to say, Pronogo. 5-0 guaranteed.
And what's not beautiful is Hellraiser's economy or their fragging power at this point. You said earlier they got 1 frag. Well, they doubled it up in this round, but that's it. Relaxa, the only member to go down, and he's got 8K in the bank, so certainly no issue there. More money, less problems, as a matter of fact, for Apeks. And remember, going into this matchup, we actually expected Gaspadarov to show us something. Z-Power was in their recent matches on the Hellraisers side, picking up the AWP. Now it's Gaspadarov, formerly of Navi Jr. He does find a 3rd frag. That's going to be an exit. That will just be 5 for Apeks, though, and this is looking interminable.
Yeah, let's remember that those exits do not even really matter. 10K upon every single member of Apeks. Freddy Frog almost sat at max cash. He'll likely be dropping a rifle here if Relaxer asks for one. He does. And a pause. I think Hellraisers need the break of pace here, Pronogo. What the hell are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, you got to figure out what you've already learned in this past 5 rounds. Maybe Apeks tendencies. They do like to take things slow. Hellraisers should look to find an opening, especially if they can get a little bit aggressive in some of their stacks. They gambled correctly a few times, but they didn't hit the shots, or they just didn't have the utility to slow Apeks down sufficiently. Because despite Apex's slower style in the mid rounds, remember that these Swedes, they will try to capitalize upon your mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can be made before the round even begins because you don't have the cash to buy the utility you need to slow them down when the hit finally does come in. And that's what we're seeing so far develop in this matchup. Hellraisers staring down the barrel of 5 rounds difference. And it's just been the opening 5 for the Swedes. This T side looking very well oiled, well drilled. And now with Relaxa on the AWP, that might be the difference maker they need to keep things just different enough so Hellraisers can't adapt. It will be fast action towards Banana. JLM getting 2. And that's a very good, favorable trade. The first time Hellraisers have looked like that at all.
Yeah, needed to toss down that smoke immediately so he doesn't get traded by Kreese, who is sat upon T-ramp. He's got the AK-47, but no visual onto Banana.
Unlikely that they even heard the AWP at all yet, so Hellraisers might get overconfident, but right now, this A site is closed for business with a double cat setup here. Well,
yeah.
One of them will fall off from the balcony. That's Kalinka taking a different position towards Pit, and reinforcements from Library as well. This A site is almost certainly closed for business.
I like the fact that HR have changed it up as well. Playing 2 on balcony shows some initiative, and with Flarich still sat here, this is very similar to what they were doing before, and Apeks are about to go for this burst from Apps. They're waiting on Relaxer smoke. That's when they'll go for the initiative. Here it comes. Quick flashbang on through as well. That'll surely go over the top. He'll throw it through that little crevice there, if he even wants to throw it in the first place. We'll back off into the boiler.
They have 40 seconds, so they can decide to pivot back if they feel the need to. The longer they wait, the more uncomfortable HR seem to be getting, using their utility. Only one member, that's Kaspadarov, the op towards B, but that's not where the target is. Apeks now facing down brackets.
Oh, quick faces as well. Freddy Frog only able to trade the first with Clinker Flash. They've got 2 inside of the pit to try and hold this one away. Quick bomb dropped. The AWP is soon to follow, and that is 5-1. The Hellraisers finally get on the board.
Finally, indeed. They did get 2 frags on Kalinka from that position. Really nice jump there to bait out the op shot. So, okay, they're on the board. They finally answered back. That's what we needed to see from the CT side defense. Exactly what we called as well. Having them charge down Banana in that scenario gives them the momentum early on, catches Apeks off guard, who are known to be a little bit more on the slow side. Relaxa will be breaking out the AWP again. No surprise given the economy that they had previously. And now, more early aggression. Gaspadarov facing down second mid from the top of CT mid. Not something you see every day. He will get flashed off the angle, so good heads-up play from Apeks to recognize the potential. Now they seem to have adapted, and only 2 members towards B here. Relaxa, the dry peek in is good for a frag onto JLM, and only 1 defender left, Squid.
Yeah, they'll burst off the back of this. It is only Problem remaining, and he has many facing him. Apeks about to make this charge, and they don't even spot for Gruss run over the top. Clinker only able to find one in the meantime. B-site is going to drop here.
Plant.
There's no way back into this, surely. Hellraisers, their money is totally broken. Surely this becomes another save once again. Gaspadarov is being tagged, and that AWP likely to drop along with Kalinka. Dennis twisting, turning, and now to try and find Flarich. Stuck in CT, able to trade, but that's certainly not good enough in a round like this, as HR have been broken.
Absolutely, and Flarich now needs to hightail it out of there. He would like to recover the AWP from Gaspadarov's corpse, but instead it's thrown over by Relaxa. Heads-up play yet again coming out from the Swedish T side. They know exactly what HR are looking for. Certainly denying them a look into this series so far. It's the 6th round on the board out of 7. The momentum certainly not broken, and that economic reset we talk about so much in Counter-Strike. You win one round and start to lower your loss bonus. It goes right back up after this one, so Hellraisers, they will have some money for a bit of a mixed buy. Gaspadarov will certainly reinvest. What I want to know is how Kalinka falls in that position CT after Gaspadarov already gets tagged from the lurk that's below the flower pot boost. I really wonder how that even comes in. He must have been holding so intently looking for some frag onto the site itself, but that feels like maybe a miscomm, maybe some nerves setting in early on for this squad.
It really does feel like that classic miscommunication that we always attribute to Hellraisers. Switching up your players so often means, yeah, there is likely going to be those miscomms amongst the ranks.
Yeah, Problem himself has just the only sort of concession so far with the MP9. Gaspadarov at least has the resources. They know exactly what their win conditions are in the CT side. Have him lock down one side of the map and the other side can maybe get a little bit aggressive or change something up about their setup. That's, of course, what's happening right now with two members facing brackets. Very interesting setup over there on the CT side. They're both lower. It's Flarich and Kalinka. So this could catch Apeks off guard if they go for yet another A-Rap. It looks like the target will be B instead. And check this out. Gaspadarov nowhere to be found. It's just the two rifles.
Problem's not even got that, has he? Only the MP9 sat below the flower pot boost. The smoke placed, looks like Apeks are going to dive right on through. Not the way you want to challenge an SMG, but they trade evenly. Now to check JLM. That's the only problem they've got to deal with before planting this bomb on B. He only finds one, so a man advantage. And this sends the AWP sky high. Relaxer, both kills, even an O-scope to follow it up. And Gaspadarov cannot do enough, getting peppered through the smoke themselves. As realistically, Kriers has done enough to secure this one as Gaspadarov gets knocked down to 10. They have to save again.
It has to be a save. Look at this. Hellraisers coming out with what looks like the first favorable retake, 4-on-3. Apeks just shut it down. Relaxa, the prime candidate in that scenario. Oh, and Flarich is now placed in a bit of an aggressive spot. If they bother checking, Apeks might be able to deprive yet another rifle from the CT defense.
This makes no sense. The risk-reward doesn't really balance up for me, Pronogo. If he loses this rifle, he certainly can't reinvest one into the next round. Yes, he'll be about $4,000, but that doesn't give you enough to buy up into that utility either. If he finds some kills, then Apeks, they've practically got enough money for the next 4 or 5 rounds. You're not actually dealing a dent there.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to secure himself an AK-47, or at best, maybe Relaxa gets a little careless, feeling high after his quick 2 frags to hold that B site. Drops the AWP into his hands. Obviously doesn't happen, so another timeout called, this time again from Hellraisers. Remember, their money is not good for a proper buy. JLM might be able to opt for an MP9. That would be the second SMG on their roster. Kalinka can get a bit of a compromised buy with one of the proper rifles, but he won't have too much utility. So the CT side defense not looking properly equipped here. He will be dropped over, it looks like. Gaspadarov donating a rifle. That's exactly what needed to happen, but that does leave them vulnerable if the next round goes the way of Apeks, who are threatening the half one, only 9 rounds in.
Oh, yes, they are. This is what we all too commonly see for Apeks as well. This T side, it's very often brutal. Hellraisers on the receiving end of it right now, only just able to scrape through that AWP for Gaspadarov. He's had it the majority of the time, I've got to say, Pronogo, but not been massively impactful at all. Has to back off the mid-peak right at the start of this 9th.
Bit of a slower start for Apeks. We haven't seen them slow things down to this degree as frequently. Usually they've already taken some control, maybe towards apartments, maybe towards Banana. Perhaps they're thinking twice about that. Not 100% sure what Hellraiser's buy is, which totally makes sense. The economy has gone this way and that for the CT side. So they'll wait to see if they can bait out an AWP shot, figure out where Gaspadarov is playing, if he even has that sniper. ALM and Problem now taking pretty heavy Banana control. Apeks might bite it if they end up that direction. Instead, it will be towards this A-bomb site. 3 members of Hellraisers to receive, including Gaspadarov's op, which has been pretty silent so far. He's going to need to find some impact.
1 kill for Gaspadarov this map. Don't want to call him out individually because it has been a pretty weak performance across the board for the Hellraisers, boys. That's maybe a symptom of it. Kalinka, straight frag, but very messy shots from the M4A1S. Leaves Dennis hunting for further frags inside of the Banana, where Problem holds around this right-hand corner. Inside of the cubby, needs to find a headshot, and there is the burst. They do trade off of one another. JLM behind the broken wall. Can I fall back to B if he wants it? Instead walks into Relaxer's scope. Trades to the AK. He's making headway.
Oh, and look at this. Freddy Frog is keeping so many members of Hellraiser's defense towards this A-bomb site. He will get spotted out, but that's going to sow the seeds of doubt. And now Hellraiser's B-bomb site defense has completely fallen. And unless Gaspadarov gets a hero shot through the smoke, doesn't look likely for a retake.
He's going to be feeling apprehensive as to take a shot, Pronogo. Remember how many times he's been sprayed through those smokes. Relaxer's very low on HP inside of construction, so they're relying on Kreese, sat on the Banana. Relaxer has got the angle. It needs to be a very fast shot into Kalinka. Finds it, and here comes the follow-up. How much damage can he do? That's the big question we need to answer. Not much more. Flarich deals with him effectively, and now Kriers is stuck on the Banana. They have not checked these angles yet, and that bomb is very far ticked. It's down to the AK. It's Gaspadarov to find it instead.
Oh, he doesn't have time.
Man.
That is brutal. I think maybe if he stuck that immediately, especially since he did have the kit, he might have had time, but he goes down as well.
And it's again that decision-making that doesn't make any sense. There's no way to get away from that bomb, so you might as well stick it at that point. Absolutely zero chance you save the AWP if you run off the bomb with 2 seconds left. So another unforced error from Gasparov, who is having a really shaky series, I've got to admit. Only 1 kill on the board. I think he might have got it to 2 just then, but this has been silent.
Yeah, he was able to trade, but it's just not enough. And Apeks have won the half already. They go into the 10th round looking for 9 on the board, and they are equipped to do it. Remember, Hellraisers do not have the money to back themselves up here. So looking at this, we do have a lot of aggression coming out from Banana. 3 members here, and Dennis is only good for 1. The nade splitting this defense and the attackers.
He has been sharp today, Pronogo. Another headshot from Dennis. Kind of what he's infamous for, but here in ESEA Premier, has been a little quiet himself. On Apeks, though, they certainly haven't been. Sat at the bottom of Banana waiting for Problem's aggression behind the broken wall. He's now joined by Gasparov.
So much presence towards B from Hellraisers, and that boost will get called out. Kriya's making him pay for peeking over the broken wall. Molotoving Problem off. So now, a FAMAS that might be able to be upgraded if Banana control is retaken at any point. And Flarich, no head armor. Not that it matters against AKs anyway. He will have the M4 towards Arch. He's already rotating out, as a matter of fact. Gamble stacking towards B. Is that where Apeks want to go? Looks unlikely. This could be a 2v3 to get Hellraisers to 2, but they've got to frag out, and they don't exactly have the equipment to do so.
This is a much better Apeks, I must say. Faking with the smoke towards A doesn't work out, leaving both of the defenders here ready and waiting to dismantle this push. They do so effectively. It is only Problem to find everybody.
And I doubted the FAMAS in that scenario. That is so brutal from him. That is a hero hold as well. He catches 2 members of Apeks with nades out and nobody there to trade. Nobody facing, nobody playing anti-flash, nothing. They didn't even have to use their flash to properly get into that scenario. Hellraisers with a very lucky 2. And Apeks, well, they're showing a little bit of a misstep there. Not exactly what you want to see. There's going to be 3 members towards A for the CT side defense. 2 of them are in apartments, where sometimes Apeks have tried to default towards. It will be a trade from Boiler, but this is so fast.
That is so snappy from Gruss. Seen it so many times from he and Dennis. Again, just so sensational. The Molotovs go down to block both players inside of the apartments. JLM and Flarich can't make any headway towards this A-bomb site, so they are locked in place with full pit control at their disposal. Here comes Kriya's. He can just peer into the apartments with this retake. Likely to come through considering the scoreline. Here they come. JLM, fast headshot. Freddy Frog was, well, suspiciously stood in the open with absolutely no support. Due to those smokes, you cannot get into place at the right time. You have to rely on Gruss instead. He's playing on top of the boxes, and Relaxer can peel from the pit in the meantime.
What a brutal hold from Apeks. Hellraisers lose everything. And make no mistake, had they saved there, they would be perhaps favored coming into the next. But looking at the scoreboard, you said it yourself, Squid, you gotta try for some of these retakes. The problem is you just won the previous round, so your loss bonus is now lower than it was previously. Apeks could get a 10th here, and we've barely even started in this series. It doesn't even look close so far, especially with Gruss and Relaxa holding with these heroic 2Ks in so many scenarios. It's brutal, and Hellraisers seemingly have no answer. They've got to make their 5 smokes work, and it's just with pistols to back it up. Only 2 sets of Kevlar. What can they do?
And that's why Inferno is such a scary map for Hellraisers. It feels like we've seen no teamwork out of them throughout this entire map, Pronogo. These rotates have been completely off. The only time that they've ever taken rounds have been off the back of massive individual plays. Think back to the FAMAS.
Yes.
3K on Banana.
If that's what it takes for Hellraisers to get on the board each and every time, then you can't count on Apeks making the mistakes to set you up for those hero plays every single time. That's the main problem, and that's what Hellraisers are finding out so far in this series. They look like chumps so far on Inferno. Apeks looking to continue that narrative as well. It's just Freddy Frog towards apartments. That's where 2 members of Hellraisers are. Utility deployed. Freddy Frog might face him from Boiler, but does it even matter? 3 members here to receive and only upgraded pistols against the full arsenal of Apeks.
The likelihood is, if Freddy Frog does get the information, he can relay that back to Apeks. They can get over to A and, well, maybe they just want to dismantle the pistols instead, because Spadorov's already been tagged, again through the smokes. He's been having a tough series so far, and the rotate the wrap is coming through due to all of that information that Freddy Frog's been communicating. Pounces from the boiler. Kalinka is taken care of instantaneously, and here comes Dennis from the sideline. Flaric has way too many angles to watch. That allows him to slip inside of the library, and realistically, there's nothing for Hellraisers to do once again. A last-second plant confirms it.
A 10th on the board for Apeks, all but guaranteed. And Hellraisers need to get some frags here.
Ooh,
JLM
nice
does well to get one. They need more, and they need to recover these rifles. Give them a little bit of an injection going into the next. Otherwise, it'll be down 8 rounds for essentially nothing. They haven't done anything in this series so far. Certainly not in this round, and that seems to be where it's going to continue. Kriya's on track to maybe clean these pistols up. He will get the first. 2 left.
You can really tell when Apeks is feeling it in the server count, Upronogo. In this one specifically, everybody, literally everybody, has been hitting their shots at all times. Kriya's, Gruss, and Dennis have kind of been that dream combination where they have just been mowing down everybody. And 0 rifles saved, albeit cash not the problem for Hellraisers.
At least right now, no. Gaspadarov will get the AWP dropped by problem. Trade it for an M4A1S. That is so rough as well, because Gaspadarov was running, but he only had 40 health or so off the back of being sprayed through the smoke yet again. That makes the bomb kill him. It's just brutal. It's when it rains, it pours, Squid. And that's what Hellraisers are fighting out so far. Certainly their flame extinguished. Kalinka has other ideas. Fast out through bedroom. Ooh, facing against Kreese, who dinks him. This is brutal, but they do get away.
That is exceptionally lucky. How do you survive when being peppered through those paper-thin walls? 10-2, Apeks can shrug this one off, especially as Relaxer gets absolutely domed through the corner of those smokes. Bit of information given over to Problem, and that's just about enough.
That's a bait smoke right there. You throw that, and you're just baiting them to peek up towards sandbags. Exactly what Hellraisers wanted, and what the doctor ordered for them. JLM will sound off with the recovered AWP.
Very clean.
Now we get a look at the double up setup for Hellraisers.
Yeah, that's exceptionally clean.
Absolutely. All right, 7 rounds separate our teams. Hellraisers are going to have to do a lot to prove. They need at least 5 to come into the second half looking good for any sort of comeback, let's be honest. And Apeks, we talked about their economy so much so far because of all the rounds that they have won. We've got another buy in this one.
Haven't talked about the Hellraisers economy so much, and they whip out the double AWP setup for the first time. Gaspadarov loses the single sniper already, only leaving JLM with one of his own towards the middle of the map. Not expecting it, Dennis walks into it. And with a minute 30 left, they've got all of the cards to play with a 3 versus 4 for Hellraisers. Let's see if they can try and close another one out. If they can end this with a 10-5 half, like, that is actually fairly standard from Inferno, despite how this started.
It's winnable. It's at least doable. And Hellraisers can look somewhat competitive. Kalinka falling there. Certainly looks anything but. Freddy Frog with a flash assist from Kriya's. Gives them a look into B. No rotates coming in. Problem has to go God mode with this AK. Otherwise, this is surely an 11th.
Yeah, it's the one AK they have to use, and it is sat solo on B. Rotate's finally coming through with the information JLM has bought them through actually peeking the middle of the map, and Freddy Frog only takes the peek isolated, allows Problem both headshots, and Relaxer is isolated in behind. Low HP, Problem doesn't land any shots there, and the AWP can't switch around in time.
Yeah, Apeks take their sweet time, shift walking, not trying to make any noise, even after throwing that smoke. Maybe keeping the seeds of doubt in Hellraisers' minds. Maybe they're faking. Maybe they're just throwing that and then doubling back. Who knows what's happening? Well, Problem seems to know because he's able to get all of those isolated 1v1s. And then, of course, his team can come in and help him out at the end. He's only good for one is Relaxa, so Apeks will be down yet another round. But 6 rounds the difference. I think they're all right. I think they're doing okay and feeling good about their T side so far, even though they are on a bit of a off bye. So this should be, in theory, a clean one for Hellraisers. We should actually end 10-5 unless Apeks have something up their sleeve.
Certainly didn't expect Apeks to be ecoing / half buying at any point during this half. Remember, Freddy Frog was max cash for the majority of it. Spending his last dollars, round number 15, to grab that AK-47, also dropping over a couple of pistols. Apeks could salvage something. Let's see if they can get up to 11. Maybe those deagles can open something up. Need to rely on Gruss to create some space through the brackets. They will charge all together. Right into Gaspadarov, easy shot to hit. Activates Flaric and Kalinka from inside of the pit. Very simple stuff. All of the rifles closed away.
That's textbook Counter-Strike in the last round of what was anything but a textbook half, Squid. That was very interesting coming into this one. We didn't expect, as you said, Apeks to look quite so clean, particularly in the early stages of that half. As we get into halftime here, I expect we'll see Apeks seeming perhaps similarly dominant. Remember that Hellraisers CT sides is actually where they do some of their best work, particularly on maps like Train, which is like a perma pick for them, we'll say. So I'm not expecting them to show too much on the T side of Inferno, but that doesn't mean they can't change my mind. What they need to do is identify the tendencies of Apeks on the CT side, and of course figure out what they can do to counter them, because I would expect Apeks to be the de facto lead, especially this is their map, this is their turf. We've seen them find success on it time and time again. Should be maybe just as dominant a second half, perhaps. Maybe there is some comeback on the cards, but so far I'm very impressed with the Swedes.
Yeah, I've got to say I am as well. I do often describe them as a hot and cold team, very on and off. Sometimes they go missing just halfway through a series, so I hope that doesn't happen as they go over to their CT side. That's usually where they do have their bigger problems, I've got to admit, especially on a map like Inferno, right, where on the T side you can control the pace, you can rely on Dennis to hit a lot of those headshots, but CT, you need those disciplines really drilled in, and a little bit of momentum actually recovered at the end of that one for Hellraisers. This could have very easily been a 12-3, a 13-2. Everything went right for them using Gaspadarov's AWP, actually the double AWP setup right at the end there.
Yeah, and that's something we only saw for essentially a round and a half after the second AWP got recovered by JLM, and that was off the back of a proper gun-on-gun round. Remember that last round with the double AWP wasn't really up against the proper round. So given that that's the scenario, we don't really know how solid Hellraisers are on Inferno. We didn't get a real proper look into what they do when they have all of the tools in their equipment. You know, they have their utility belt sort of fully stocked. They didn't get it much of a chance. So they got to shake that off coming into the second half, and they got to prove to us that they're here to play and not just here to capitulate with Apeks seemingly rolling them over, especially in those early rounds on their T side. These Swedes looked absolutely lights out, and like I said, I'm personally of the opinion that will happen again and again, especially on Inferno, especially against Hellraisers.
Well, let's get into it right now. Secondary pistol, the only real difference maker, Dennis. A CZ75 body armor, playing the raid boss setup. He will hold that one towards B.
Oh, that's very interesting as well. And towards half wall, so any sort of utility exchange going the way of Hellraisers might remove that super quickly. Remember as well that we've seen these CZs in pistol rounds a couple of times. It's just very strange when they do come out in any capacity other than very close range. Dennis knows this. He's going to play to its strengths by that half wall, but the bomb is already out apartments.
They've already got the majority of this A control, already knowing that there's somebody lingering in Banana. That's JLM taken care of. Ooh. The pistols can do the rest. Quick shot, Gruss. This A site, yes, it's been taken. Bit of money from the bomb plant, but realistically, Gaspadarov in problem. They've got a lot. 5 players holding them away. Problem first, but he stood out in the open, and Gruss is more than ready, able and willing to take him down, and there's the SPS to do the rest.
4 frags in the pistol for Gruss. And we said earlier, we needed Hellraisers to come out swinging and show us that they can carry that momentum forward, that they got the last couple of rounds in a row on their CT side. We needed to see something real nice from them. And I think the apartment lurk certainly caught Apeks off guard. The bomb plant will afford them something resembling a buy going into this one. We've seen that time and time again in the modern CS meta. But is it realistically enough? When you have 5v2 scenarios coming out of the pistol round after the bomb's already gone down and Apeks are already up by double your score line, you don't want to cede that ground. Unfortunately, the Swedes will indeed take that one, 11-5, and they're looking to be quite dominant in this. We've got just 2 rifles for Hellraisers, and okay, decent utility. They can certainly make something work with that, but I'm still favoring the Swedes in their defense, especially after they did get a little bamboozled, we can say, about Hellraiser's early momentum, early movement in that previous round. They're going to be watching all their angles, checking all their boxes. They're certainly not going to be, perhaps, content with just allowing Hellraisers to run amok on this map.
Oh no, and that's exactly the mistake that Hellraisers actually made on their CT side, where they were conceding too much space to Apeks. So I do not imagine the same mistakes made here. Even putting 4 players on A, just leaving the solo M4A4 of Gruss sat behind the broken wall. He can communicate this information early, maybe only expecting pistols. With Freddy Frog likely to be the initial rotate. Here goes the last of the CT equipment. The incendiary blocked off towards mid, but there's still 50 seconds to be played here, and Hellraisers have some nades of their own.
Yeah, this is the slow style we talked about. I did a little bit of foreshadowing earlier. Hellraisers do like to slow things down. Relaxa with the boost over. Should be able to spot problem here with a nade out, and that's off the back of Freddy Frog.
Lovely boost. Gives Kreese the space to take the face into mid. There goes the deagle. Down to 73 HP. They've got all of the information towards B. That's where they'll make their charge against Gross, who's playing behind the new box. Fast frag, only able to trade back one. That was Relaxer through the smokes. So bomb down, 15 seconds left to do so. And Apeks might as well make their claim back onto the B site sooner rather than later. The smokes, yes, they're placed. That'll slow them down ever so slightly. But 3 already into construction. They've cleared out this precious map control that HR maybe too scared to take, maybe too little HP. Gaspadarov and JLM down to practically 50 with Flarich out in the open. There, he's spotted. Gaspadarov, JLM, they've got the back box tucked into Emo. As Gaspadarov needs every headshot. Never gonna happen.
No, he's good for 2 on the entry, and that was respectable. Remember, Hellraisers didn't telegraph at any point that they had an AK-47 at this point in the round, so that's very well drilled from that T side. Unfortunately, they get the bomb plant, and it still goes the way of Apeks. Especially considering the CTs had no utility to retake. Hellraisers might have had a shot, but they could only recover that lesser CT weaponry that was brought into this bonus round. So we get into the third of the second half, and Apeks with a 12-5 lead, they should be on track to do even more, because it's only some Tech 9, some upgraded pistols, and of course, the light utility. That's all Hellraisers can bring into this round, along with their Kevlar, and they will be going fast up Banana, but there's so many CTs here to stay, and with the utility favoring the defenders, you don't expect Hellraisers to take the 6th.
Yeah, it feels like all they've got is this idea to rush B. Taken out of the CIS strat book, but the AK-47s, the rifles, they're good enough to shut them down. It's 13-5.
Yeah, you say CIS strat book, maybe that's Gaspadarov's strat, carried over from Navi Jr., perhaps? Yes. Certainly didn't get them much in that. And they are running after every single round, remember. Hellraisers backs against the wall, 3 maps away from going to train very early. Apeks might be taking us there at a breakneck pace. And keeping in mind that the utility is not there for at least Gaspadarov. The rest of his team has enough to make something work, but they're not going to be able to play their trademark slow style with this little, in terms of the nade department. Their utility belt looking a little low. Not so for the CT defenders. They still, in fact, have a FAMAS on Gruss. He's fine farming up some cash without investing properly. He'll be looking to recover an AK if this hit towards A happens. Looks likely, currently. And remember, clock's ticking for Hellraisers. Less utility they have, the less they'll have to work with in any retake scenario, and that's where Apeks have been favored so far.
Smoke towards Arch side. There's the Molly, the incendiary, towards Pit. Another one for Banana, throwing them all over the map to try and divert the attention. But this isn't going to force the rotates one way or another. Just keeping Kreese within the CT spawn where he wants to pay preferential treatment towards this A-bomb site with just a Gaspadarov watching down quad. Apeks aren't going to be peeking this too aggressively. Leaving Kreese in Arch, fast kill, and no trade. That's problem eliminated, and with the smoke fading, that'll open up the whole avenue to Relaxer to find another one. There's the bomb gone, and Relaxer, yes, he stood in the open, could be compromised by Flarich in the apartments, but takes another swing, and Gaspadarov is instantly eliminated. That's C4, it's out in the open. They now know where Flarich is playing from, and Kalinka needs to take 2. Instead, he takes bullets, takes lead, and Dennis provides the rest.
What was Hellraiser? What were they doing? What was their game plan coming into this round? You saw the last smoke they had on Kalinka moving towards B to fake, to smoke off that CT side, slow down rotations. That only works if Apeks are not already burrowed into A, and maybe they didn't know that, but they never took enough map control to confirm. And that's what ends up stabbing them in the back. The Hellraisers T side, slowing things down much too much for their own good measure. And remember as well, they didn't have the utility to even afford that properly. Dennis now playing from apartments. He's coming out from bedroom just to frag out against these pistols. There's nothing that Hellraisers have that can handle this. It's a spray down towards mid. All right, Kalinka will trade, but it's over nice and quick. JLM the last alive.
Yeah, that bomb down absolutely secures it, ensures it. JLM, nice kill, grabs an AK-47 for his troubles, but that C4 has been totally smoked off. Apeks do have their attention drawn between both sides. Do they peek into CT? Rather put the approach on mid. They just don't want to face this too aggressively, so they can close the map off early. Knowing that train's coming up, that's Hellraiser's home ground, the only territory that you can even make an argument that they're comfortable on.
Yeah, the question is, time has elapsed at this point, and JLM thinks this bomb is a trap, so once he recovers it, does he even go A? Does he decide instead to pivot towards B? Not making too much noise. Maybe apartment's his target. We'll see if Apeks make any mistake here, but in this 2-on-1, it's for map point. The Swedes should have it in their bag.
Yeah, if both CTs actually play this one together, then there's no way that JLM can isolate these frags. Unfortunately, isolated towards Arch, and Freddy Frog getting the info. Now he can creep closer to the AWP to find the first. Krias cannot instantly peek, and with 20 seconds, the bomb is going away. They've played this disjointed, and Krias needs to save the day. Does. It's 15-5, and that's exactly what Apeks have been doing all map.
Yeah, these retake scenarios, if you can even call that one a retake, where it goes their way as well. Hellraisers get the bomb down in so many of these rounds. Feels like almost every single time, as a matter of fact. And even with a scrappy buy, they've got the money to invest into the next. The only problem is, and it's a small problem, remember, it is map point for the Swedes. Apeks, with one round, could make this a 16-5 short order affair. And Hellraisers so far, especially on their T side, have had no way in.
No way in at all. The AWPs come out for perhaps a final time. Gaspadarov, he's got one of his own to try and open this up towards the mid. This is so tough. Bomb on his back. How are they going to get it into either of these bomb sites?
That's the question they're asking themselves, Squid. They don't seem to have much of an answer so far. They did take early banana control, but utility exchange forces them back a little bit. 3 members of this Apeks CT defense holding that ground relatively passively. Krias will get the first frag. This should be over and done with by the looks of things. Every time Hellraisers have dropped the man advantage, they've also dropped the round.
Yeah, we're done and dusted. There goes the nade over the top. Kalinka tries to trade it up, but doesn't spot Gruss early enough. That loses Gaspadarov, and peeking into the open against Dennis is another headshot to try and finish off the map for him. Kalinka right onto Banana is dealt with, and that is Apeks. They go 1-0 in this series.
1-0, and it's a quick map, Squid. We expected Hellraisers to maybe make this scrappy, you know, bring Apeks down to the level of competition, so to speak. And we didn't think that Apeks themselves on the Swedish side would be so well drilled. While they certainly surprised us, Hellraisers might be able to turn it around and take us to a third on their home ground of Train. You called it earlier. That's where they do their best work. So, all right, we go into map 2. We can forget this map ever happened if we're on the Hellraiser side and maybe see what they can do if they can get onto the CT side and properly dig in with those double AWPs that we know that they sort of rely on, especially in those late round scenarios. First, they'll have to contend with the T side of Train, which is not always nice, even if you are Hellraisers, even if it is your best map. That CT side advantage certainly can come into play, and we haven't seen Apeks too much on Train, but I have a feeling they'll have enough protocols to at least make that map a little bit more exciting than this one certainly was.
Yeah, 16-5, you can't really even dig into it too far, can you? It felt like Hellraisers just never got comfortable on Inferno, that those protocols were completely out of line, especially on their T side, when like they weren't able to do anything right at the very end there. Obviously, we saw that counter-terrorist half first, where they weren't really able to get that money rolling, the only silver lining at any time really being the loss bonus, and that could have been, I mentioned it earlier, a 13-2 half to close it out. Apeks could have closed this out in an even more dominant fashion, and I've got to say, Pronogo, it is a breath of fresh air after watching a lot of Apex's previous matchups. They felt very weak in a lot of those series. They felt disjointed themselves. So to carry this into Inferno and actually put together what I would classify as an actually pretty well-structured performance, props to them, and I hope to see that continue throughout this series now they're 1-0 up.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely the case, first of all. And second of all, the fact that as well, we saw this sort of sea change happen for Apeks, where they did play a little bit of a different map pool, perhaps, than what we're seeing so far. They impressed us by 2-0ing Wisla, which previously went the other way, a 2-0 for the Polish squad, and the same maps were played. It was a gentleman's agreement. Let's do the same veto, let's get everything in order. Oh, and then the Apeks side absolutely dumpsters Wisla. That was very surprising for us, especially since we expected. It was kind of weird that they even picked into some of the best maps for Wisla in that series. The fact that they're willing to perhaps do that again and say, all right, we'll throw down the gauntlet. Here you go, Hellraisers, have your best map, and let's see who the better team really is. That's very exciting for me, and that's what gives me quite a bit of hope that this could actually be another 2-0 for this Apeks side, and they are certainly on the rise in a way that we didn't expect it, since they had seemed to sort of stagnate and stall out, especially in ESEA Premier against some of what we would classify as the higher competition. They're making a name for themselves, third in their group so far.
Well, the signature confident style from Apeks works out wonders on Inferno. We'll go to a quick break, but don't go anywhere because ESEA Premier continues after this.